Okay, welcome to another episode of Start Us in Gold, and this is going to be a sail fail episode. I'm going to start off with mentioning that this episode is kind of about a near disaster on a good friend's boat. She called me up. She had a little issue with her floor, and it appeared that the mast support inside the boat was sinking into the floor. And her boat's a sister ship to mine. It's a Transworld 41. It's a center cockpit catch 41-footer offshore sailboat. And our boats have deck step mast, and as opposed to keel step mast. The difference is that keel step mast is a mast that goes all the way through the cabin top, down through the floor of the boat, or the cabin sole, if you will, and into the keel. There's usually a step on the keel where it mounts to and distributes the weight across the keel superstructure. And ours are deck stepped. And when they deck step them, they usually have a big support beam. Ours has compression posts that one goes from the cabin top internally to the cabin sole, and then from the sole there's a substructure, usually a very short one, that goes from underneath the floor to the keel. Now these usually have plywood or other material to distribute the weight evenly across the floor and the keel. There's pros and cons to both of these setups, and any naval architect could tell you that just about everything on a boat is a sailor. If you're a sailor, you pretty much know that everything on a boat is a compromise. There's good and bad points about everything on a boat. So the compromise for this one is they have to distribute all the weight from the mast, which could be, on our boat's pretty big, pretty big mast. So I think it's 49 feet, 54 I believe it is off the water. And there's a lot of weight to that mast. And plus, with all the shrouds tightened down, you're looking at thousands of pounds of force trying to push that mast through the cabin top. So there's a shiny, polished stainless steel pole, and underneath the floor there is several layers of plywood stacked, and sub-compression post right underneath that goes into the keel, distributes all the force from the mast. She noticed on her boat that the floor was starting to sag really bad right there. It looked like it was coming apart, and the bolts were loose that held the primary compression post in. So upon noticing that, she called me, sent me some photographs, and said, hey, there's something wrong going on here. And she looked underneath and saw that the factory, and we're going to probably call this one because I usually have all my videos on sail fails tagged as, is it a mechanical error, is it a design error, is it a manufacturing error, what caused the fail. And sometimes it's a maintenance fail. This one looks like it is possibly a manufacturing error, not a design error, but a manufacturing. Now what they did is it appears that they put regular mild carbon steel post under the floor on an offshore sailboat, which is exposed to salt water constantly, whether it's just in humidity, water in the bilge, you name it, it's constantly exposed to salt water. The miracle here is that this lasted, her boat's in 1983, hers is a little older than mine. There's a 4-year difference between the two. And what happened is that it totally rotted almost completely out, sank the floor down, but it was amazing that it lasted this long. I mean, it probably could have failed many years ago, especially being in the salt water. Mine's on the Great Lakes. I have fresh water. As soon as Nicole is her name, as soon as she sent me this video of what was going on in her boat, I went right underneath my bilge, lifted the boards up, the drop boards, went right underneath and inspected mine with a real bright flashlight, and luckily mine was all stainless and it was in really good shape. Hers, however, was not that lucky, so she had to pull the boat, pull the mast off, get all the shrouds, all the standing rigging, running rigging had to come off, and tear up the floor. So it was a real disaster, and it was something that I'm kind of glad she called me right away on it, because it was something I needed to inspect, because it was one of the few things that I overlooked when I inspected my boat to purchase it. And there was a couple of things I overlooked, and that was one of them. I did not go under the forward part of the bilge. I went through the whole rest of the boat, checked all the bulkheads for rot, I checked all the fittings, everything that was attached to the hull, to the keel. I pretty much inspected everything except for that sub-compression post in the front of my boat. So I was glad that I was, this was pointed out to me that I needed to do that. Unfortunately, she already had suffered damage to hers. So it's something that every boat, whether your keel stepped or your deck stepped, checking the support all the way down the keel is very important. It's just like keel boats. On some of the boats that have the keels mounted with big studs and bolts and nuts on the top, those have to be inspected constantly, because they're always immersed in water, and stainless steel, when it's immersed in water, will rot. Okay, so anything that's in a bilge of a boat should really be inspected, especially compression posts for mast. We have really heavy duty. Her boat and my boat both have different types of mast. We have different manufacturers of mast, and we have different deck plates. But there's still a massive deck plate. But those deck plates have to be supported, otherwise that mast will just force itself right down through the hull. And that's not something that you ever want. So anyways, long story short, what we did was, after she called me about this, she was kind of in an emergency. She wants to sail the boat, and this is not something that you can just run out to the store and buy. So I got together a bunch of people. I'm going to mention their names right now, because a bunch of people came through to help out with this project for associated fees, but they're very reasonable. And I got to tell you that we decided we're going to build her a new mast post. Okay. And it turned out that I do a lot of I work for a machine shop, a very large machine shop, and we found that I haven't purchased stainless myself in a long time. Of course, my company does, but I haven't bought any stainless in 3 or 4 years. And if you're going to build anything in stainless steel, I would suggest holding off for a little while, because the prices are like triple right now. It's way up there. We ordered a plate. I ordered a plate. It's 1/4 inch thick, 1x2, and it was darn near $300. So stainless, if you got a stainless emergency, yeah, go ahead and just spend the money and fix it. But if you got a long-term project that you're going to be using a lot of stainless steel on, you might want to wait until nickel and some of the other properties come down that make up stainless steel, because the prices are right through the roof right now. Anyways, I put a couple videos together. I put a couple pictures together of what she sent me. And I did some videos on cutting the metal and stuff in my plant where I work, and I'll insert those in here. But it was quite a project. We had to get a lot of people together. So I called a good friend of mine. I'm going to mention his name right now. His name is Chip. And Chip put everything together for me. We took the measurements that Nicole had sent me. She measured everything out really well. And we made a CAD design of it. We needed it in CAD. We needed to know exactly what we were building and what scale. And then we needed to make the files. So another friend of mine who owns a big company called, I'm going to try to get this right, his name's Brian. He owns a big company in North Royalton, Ohio, called Precision Cut Fabrication Incorporated. And he does a lot of laser cutting and a lot of fabrication work and welding. So I took the metal down to him, gave him the files, and he cut that for me immediately. I told him, I says, hey, look, I'm in a fix, I've got this problem. And he says, well, if you're helping somebody out, I'll give you a decent rate. And he did. He gave me a really super rate that there's no way I could possibly beat. So he was able to cut it for me while I waited, which is extremely rare. So, and this is what sailors do for each other, It's kind of been a community effort. So a lot of people kind of jumped in. It was really great. Then I took the stuff immediately after it was cut to my welder, and my welder says, hey, you know, this is the price. And I have a really good welder. I'm going to mention his name right now. His name's Carl Hose. He's out of North Ridgeville, Ohio, and he's an expert welder, especially with stainless. If you're ever needing stainless welded, this is the guy to see. Especially if you're in this area in the Great Lakes region, he's one of the best. And the price is very fair. It's very reasonable. And because he was leaving on a trip, we were really pressed for time. And I asked him, I says, hey, can you do this for me like right away? I got a friend that's in an emergency down in Virginia, in the Chesapeake Bay. He says, well, I'm leaving on a trip, but yeah, I'll push this forward for you. So, you know, a lot of people came together, and it's great to have all these resources. But the sailing community has been really great, and this is one of the reasons why. And I can't stress enough how many people have come to my aid in all the years that I've been sailing. And so I'm just kind of pushing it back out there and returning the favor. But anyways, this is basically what we made right here. I don't know if you can see this, but this is the step, the sub step. Now, this is a 10 1/4 inch rise. It's actually 10 1/2 on the outsides, with a 7-degree angle on the bottom, and then the bolt holes on the top. The bottom just gets fiberglassed in. Stainless tube. I think we're dealing with 1/4 inch here. This is 1/16 wall, or maybe even a little bit more. I think that's 0.85 wall. So we put it all together and clocked it, you know, so it was not going to be tilted in any direction. The thing about these is they have to be exactly, the post has to be exactly straight in line with the post above it on top of the floor. This goes underneath the floor into the keel. But this was a failure on her boat only because somebody had put one in there that was made out of steel, mild steel. It wasn't stainless steel at all. It might have been like a 4140 or something, maybe a tool steel, but not a steel that was anywhere near capable of handling a marine environment, especially an offshore environment. If you have an older boat that was made, especially one that was made in an Asian yard, you know, like Taiwan, I would really go through and inspect anything that's in the bilge so you don't have an accident like she had. This could have been a really disaster at sea for her, and it could have punched a hole right in the top of her cabin top if that thing would have disintegrated while she was under sail. There's a lot of force, a lot of downward force on a mast, especially under sail. A hard wind blowing, there is downward force, and you do not want to be underneath that thing if it's coming through the ceiling. So it's something you really want to inspect. So this was a sail fail, and it was definitely related to either the manufacturing process or somebody might have replaced it, but it's highly unlikely that somebody would have replaced it in a boat that's only 40 years old. It's basically 40 years old this year. So I'm thinking that it was probably original, and I think somebody took a shortcut. And sometimes in the factory, just because it's new doesn't mean it's good. You can buy brand new boats that have shortcuts like that in them. And that's why I tell people, people ask me, you know, hey, I'm buying a new boat, and the first thing I tell them is get a marine surveyor. And they're like, no, why would I want a marine surveyor? That's for, you know, buying an old used boat. And I'm like, no, there's a lot of shortcomings on new boats in design and in the construction. So you really got to be careful. I mean, there's boats that come off the line, and 2 years later they're all full of blisters because there's too much chromic chloride in the resins. You know, a good marine surveyor could test that stuff. He could see that stuff. You know, shine a bright light through the hole. If there's any voids, you'll see those before the boat comes off the floor. There's a lot of things that can be looked at. Hard spots in a hull, you know, or a lot of boat companies will take their bulkheads and just fiberglass them straight to the hull without any free space. And all of a sudden, you know, and 2 years later, you have these massive hard spots when you look down the side of your hull, and that's very bad construction and very bad design. So it's a good idea to keep inspecting, and I tell people inspect. Maintenance is one thing, inspecting is another. You should inspect every day something on your boat. I mean, if it's just a quick walk around like a pre-flight, you know, if you ever watch a pilot, you know, there's a lot of times they'll go out on the runway, walk around their aircraft once. I think they still do this. Commercial pilots, I believe they still do a pre-flight check where they'll walk around the plane before they go into the cabin and take off with the plane. You should do that with your boat too. And you don't have to go through the keel and go through with bright lights and moisture meters and all that before you go on every cruise. But you should do it a couple times a year. There's a lot of this, especially if it's an old boat. You know, if it's over 30, 40 years old, there's a lot of things you want to check on a daily basis. Anyways, I'm going to cancel this right here for this episode. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe. And if you have any boat fails at all, please give us a call. Let us know. Maybe it's something we could talk about online. If need be, interview, which I'm probably going to do. I'm probably going to do an augmented section of this particular video with Nicole about the damage on this boat. She did a video on it already. If you want to check it out, her channel is on YouTube and it's called Saddles and Sails. And her name's Nicole. The boat's called Bob. And it's something to check out. She's got a really great channel and a lot of fun videos. This last one I think is an important one. So if you get a chance, check it out. Please subscribe, and thank you for watching.